Yes, we're back live. Excellent. I cannot believe it's Friday. It feels like I just came into work on a Saturday. I don't know. Yesterday was such a weird day. Obviously, I didn't have you guys yesterday. But it was still weird because I still had to teach. Anyway, I'm going to stall for about a minute. And then I'm going to allow people to kind of get in. And then I will explain how today is going to run. Should be a fairly straightforward day. I should double check one thing. Double check, when did I make the due date for your project? I made it on the 18th. Thursday. Wait. Yeah, Thursday. I don't have you guys on Thursday. Okay. I'm still going to keep it the 18th, though. I think what ended up happening was that I had originally thought that I was going to have you guys on Tuesday, Thursday. But what ends up happening is Monday there is no school. And because Monday there is no school, then I have you guys on Wednesday, Friday of next week. But I still want to have the project due on Thursday. I think that would be fantastic. And then Wednesday would be a reminder, just like Tuesday would have been under whatever calendar was going through my head. Anywho, so I see. I mean, I thank you guys for leaving the comments there. I mean, I don't know how many people are actually in this video. It says like 2 people in the video and 2 comments so far. Oh, there comes some more. People gotta come in and get this lesson going. Here's my general plan for today. Number 1, I want to just kind of give everyone that reminder in regards to the project and what your responsibilities are. Number 2, I do want to take a step in a new direction, except that new direction is still going to involve voting systems, but it's going to involve just a newer direction that we haven't been in yet. So my intent is to take part of this class period to introduce that newish topic and to give you guys the remainder of the time to continue working through those projects. I want to give you a little extra time to do that because obviously it'll take some time to gather the data and then actually figure out who the winner is via whatever voting system that you guys are doing. So first, let me remind you about said project. Now, obviously, project is due on Thursday. I realized that we don't have class on Thursday. I have you Wednesday, Friday, but I'm still going to keep it due on Thursday. I think that would be best. You need to email me about the topic that you choose. I have only replied to a couple of emails so far, but as I get them, I'm going to be updating the spreadsheet. I should do that. Okay. All right. So sorry, just reading an email. Let me reply to it right now. Boom. But yeah, I'm going to update that spreadsheet. I just have to find. Come on, you. I just have to actually find the instructions to the project so I can. There it is, topic choices, and then I can edit that thing down. Here we go. Boom. Cool. So anyway, sorry, I'm just thinking aloud as I'm doing this. So with the remainder of the time that we have after I teach this newish type thing, if you haven't emailed me, of course, you can email me. We can go back and forth, discuss whatever topic that is. I can update the spreadsheet, and you guys can go ahead and start beginning to collect your data. That needs to be done first. It's part of the instructions. So with the remainder of the time that we have, you can look out and be like, okay, who can I get to actually answer the survey? Contact the people that you need to contact in order to answer said survey. And then we kind of go from there. And you begin figuring out who's going to win that vote and putting together your project. That'd be fantastic. So, oh, goodness. I'm probably going to be checking my email over the weekend. So if you do email me over the weekend, it may take me a little longer to get back to you, but I should be able to get back to you over the weekend. So, yeah. It feels like such a long day. I don't even know. I was thinking about it on the drive in today, actually. I was just thinking about the concept of like this school year and how it's just felt like we're all running uphill nonstop. That's what this whole school year's kind of felt like. Anyway, that's me. All right. Shake off the cobwebs. Let's get going. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not already have them out, I'm going to need those notebooks out and open. Yes. Yes, Mr. Markey. We're so excited to hear what you have to say, Mr. Markey. Woo! You know, I don't know. Oh, goodness gracious. Such a interesting day. It's so weird coming back from a snow day as well. Oh, wait. It wasn't a snow day? Then what was it? It was just a day. Anyway. All right. My little marker here. This is going to be a brief introduction to the concepts of weighted voting systems. So let me title this Weighted Voting Systems. Today is the 12th. Here we go. And that's my little title there. I'm trying to get the video open in my on my phone so that I can at least see the chat in case you have any questions as we're moving along. Come on, thing. There it is. I see all of you in that chat. I can see the chat right now. Anyway. So what's the difference between what we've done with these voting systems? And of course, you're going to be focusing in on those voting systems for your project, of course, as I sent out that reminder one more time. But what's the difference between those voting systems that we've been doing and the concept of a weighted voting system? The voting systems that we have been doing, whether it be plurality, head-to-head, plurality with elimination, board account, doesn't matter. Typically, it is one vote, one person. That is how those voting systems usually fall. And it doesn't matter what system of the four that you're doing, even with board account with its point system and plurality with elimination, where my first place choice didn't win, so my second place choice gets to move up, that kind of thing. It's still one vote, one person, even if you are putting together a preference ballot. In a weighted voting system, more often than not, one group or what they end up calling a player, one player voting in that system, their vote may be worth more than another person. The most common examples that I can bring forth, think of a board of directors of a Fortune 500 company. If you have a board of directors or something, that board of directors may not end up being one vote, one person. I mean, they could be, but more often than not, one person may have a certain percent of ownership of the company. For example, if I owned 40% of whatever company it is, Markey Co. Productions, whatever that ends up being. But if I own 40% of a company, then I'm on the board of directors. That means that when we vote on something, my vote is worth a ton more than other people. In fact, if you look at a bunch of people all together were 100% of the vote. Well, my vote counts as 40% of the vote, and all together, the rest of you only account for 60% of the vote. more logical way of looking at it could be the Electoral College. Now, we've talked about the Electoral College a lot, but the Electoral College is what is known as a weighted voting system. California, although it is one state, when their electors vote in the Electoral College a month after the election, they are able, or their vote is cast for 55 votes. Now, typically they don't split their vote, but that's 55 votes right there. New Jersey, although one state similar to that of California, we only have a weighted voting of 14. California weighs a ton more than we do. Other states like Montana and Wyoming and North and South Dakota, they only have 3 electoral votes. Their weights are all obviously a lot smaller. Depending on who has all of the quote-unquote weight in this voting system, we can measure quantifiably the power that they have. It's a really interesting system, this weighted voting system, because it is more true to life than a one vote, one person situation. One vote, one person, typically, state elections and things of that nature, governor, senator, House of Representatives, local elections, things of that nature. But think of a vote that we would do in this classroom. Now, for those of you that know me, if all of you, now obviously you're all virtual right now, but if all of you were sitting in these desks and then you decided, hey, we're all going to vote on something, and I'd be like, that's great, let's vote. And then you all vote to end class and I vote to keep class going. My vote weighs a ton more than yours does. In fact, again, as I've said in the past, one might consider the fact that this voting system is not a democracy. It is a marktatorship, a Marxism, something along those lines. But in this weighted voting system process that I'm about to describe to you on paper, it does allow for a dictator. Just saying. Emphasis on the dictator. Anyway, back to this. Weighted voting systems. Now, in a weighted voting system, I can give you a lot of different examples, but first I have to define a few things. So first, let's talk about the players. The players are the actual voters in the system. Now, typically, if I'm going to identify a player in the voting system, I am going to identify them using the proper notation. P sub 1, P sub 2, ... all the way up to P sub n. If it's a weighted voting system, then I'm going to assume there's more than one player. If there's one player, then it's like, well, that's kind of a weird case. But typically, there's always more than one player. But you don't know how many there could be. There could be 3 players. There could be 50 players. Doesn't matter. And then there are the weights. Now, the weights are positive integers that represent how many votes a player has. Yeah, you can, obviously, if it ends up being negative, I'm sorry, that's a broken system right there. If you have a negative weight, so it can't be negative, and your weight can't be 0 because then you have no say in the voting system, thus you're not a player. So it has to be a positive integer. And I emphasize integer. Typically, they don't want to say like, oh, you have half a vote. No, if I have half a vote and you have 1 vote, then we don't express it like that. We express it as me having 1 vote and you having 2 votes. They have to be positive integers. And again, typically, they have this type of notation. There we go. W sub 1, W sub 2, that whole thing. And it logically goes to say that while player 1 has a weight that is equivalent to weight 1. What is this? Again, I'm getting more emails. Stop emailing me, people. Anyway, player 2 has a weight that's equivalent to, well, weight 2 and things of that nature. Again, I hate that glare. I apologize for the glare. This is a little scribble right here, just so you know. Let me move that up. Let's talk about the quota. Then there is known as a quota. Now, a quota, I'm going to write out this sentence, but I have to describe it a little bit more. A quota is the minimum number of votes needed to pass a motion. So, we're going to be voting on the presidency. Okay, cool. Electoral college, you're going to be voting on the presidency. What's the quota? The quota is 270. You need a minimum of 270, and then you win. Oh, cool. Yeah. Quotas, most of the time, end up being like 50% plus 1. In order to pass a motion, you have to have 50% plus 1, as we've done with all these other voting systems. But in various voting systems, as long as you agree to it beforehand, I don't know, like Congress, sometimes you have to have 2/3. Sometimes, in regards to the filibuster, you have to have more than 60 votes. That's what they call a filibuster-proof Congress. In the Senate, they can filibuster, meaning like a guy can just stand up there and talk, and as long as he doesn't concede his time, he can talk pretty much as long as he wants until he passes out, and they do that in such a way in order to prevent a bill from being voted on. But if your group of players have a weight that totals more than 60% of that vote, then you can actually break that filibuster and vote to end it. It's called a filibuster-proof Congress. Doesn't happen all too often. Really doesn't. So actually, let me write that statement down about quotas. Quotas must be greater than 50%, meaning 50% plus 1. You can't be equal to 50%. It has to be greater than 50% and less than or equal to 100%. Clearly, your quota can't be more than 100% of the vote that is available. If there's only 10 people voting and you need a quota of 15, that's clearly a broken system. That's not going to work. It has to be less than 100% of the available votes. So let me give you an example as to what this notation kind of looks like so we can talk about this voting system. Yeah, let's do that. There we go. Right there is an example of a voting system. Now, what the heck does any of this mean up here? This is just the notation. I'll move it over a tiny bit. There's a number being blocked by the glare. Move it over, move it over, move it over, move it over, move it over. Hopefully that fixed it right there. Yeah, it fixed it right there. Good. So this is an example of a weighted voting system, but it contains all of the things that I just decreed. Looking at this notation for a voting system, I know that there are 4 players voting in the system. There are 4 players. Look where I'm pointing. Player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4. There are 4 players voting in this system. And each player has a different weight associated with it. Player 1's vote weighs 8, player 2's vote weighs 7, player 3's vote weighs 3, and player 4's vote weighs 2. Typically speaking, in this notation, the way that we list out the players is from greatest weight to least weight. It is possible for two players to have the same weight. Absolutely, it is. Well, we'll see how that goes. Now, this number, this 12 right here, represents the quota. The quota is the minimum number of votes needed to pass a motion. Now, yes, there are 4 players. There are 4 players, but let's just count up what how many votes they actually have, how many votes they weigh. 8 and 7 plus 3 plus 2 equals 20. There are 20 votes available. There are 20 votes available. And a quota has to be at a minimum 50%, or I'm sorry, more than 50%. So in reality, for this particular system, even though there are 20 votes, you can't have 10 be the quota. 10 cannot be the quota, because you could have 10 people voting for the motion and 10 people voting against the motion. So it cannot be 10. At a bare minimum, you have to have the quota at 11. But for this system, for this particular weighted system, they put the quota at 12. They're allowed to do that. They agreed to it. So in regards to this voting system, you can have certain people voting for and against. And unfortunately, you can't pass anything by yourself. You can't just say, I want to vote for it. And everyone's like, no. Oh, well, sorry. You have to have a group working together that totals 12, according to this quota. So, for example, player 1 and player 2, they could vote together. Boom, they already got it. They don't need anybody else. But if player 1 and player 2, they have a falling out, they don't like each other, they're on opposite ends of the political spectrum, I don't know, whatever, then player 1 could be like, all right, fine. I'll get players 3 and 4 on my side. And they don't need player 2. Player 2 is like, you know what? I could put players 3 and 4 on my side. As long as you find a group that totals the quota or more, as long as you can get them to agree to vote in the direction that you want them to vote, then boom, you got it. It's a weird kind of game. Because even though players 3 and 4 don't have that much power in regards to this weighting voting system, they have less power than players 1 and 2. If players 1 and 2 disagree, they need to convince the rest of the players to work with them. For example, if you had, let's say, players 1 and 3 agree, and that's 11, and you had players 2 and 4 agree, and that is 9, and they'll say they're on opposite sides. So players 1 and 3, they have 11 votes. Players 2 and 4, they have 9 votes. Nobody meets the quota. And if nobody meets the quota, the motion does not pass. Sorry, you guys are going to have to work together. Even though your weights are different, you're going to have to work together. That working together, that group of people that work together, there's actually a name for it. It's called a coalition. You have to have a coalition that agree that meet the quota. You have to. Otherwise, sorry, it's not going to work out. Again, it's like I think back to the Electoral College. If all of the electoral votes are going to just one of 2 people, if all the electoral votes are going to one of 2 people, it is possible for the Electoral College to split 269-269. And it's never happened before where there's an exact tie, but it has happened before where the Electoral College, nobody met the quota. You have to meet the quota. If Biden and Trump, if Biden and Trump last November had split the Electoral College 269, 269, 50%, 50%, sorry, you don't have a winner yet. Because at a bare minimum, the quota has to be greater than 50%. It has to be 50% plus 1. That's the way that's why these weighted voting systems typically work. You have to have 50% plus 1, unless as a group you decide it has to be more. So just various little examples like that. Oh, so weird. So let me give you a couple definitions here. First of all, a coalition. A coalition is just basically players who vote the same way. Players who vote the same way. If you agree with each other and vote in the same direction, then you technically are a coalition. There are a lot of coalitions in Congress. They typically belong to groups that call themselves like a caucus or some junk like that, And if you caucus with a particular group, then you typically vote whatever way they decide. So you may have your own opinions, but if you belong to a certain caucus, then if they decide to go one way, sorry, you're kind of stuck going that way. And then there is, of course, a winning coalition. A winning coalition is just basically a coalition who has enough votes to win. Coalition who has enough votes to win. So going back to the voting system that I have at the top of the screen right here, going back to that particular voting system, we can talk about the different types of winning coalitions that could potentially take place. Now, I'm going to list out these winning coalitions, but keep in mind that these winning coalitions, we are going to be doing some mathematical calculations with them next time, but I just kind of wanted to list them out for the sake of argument. But if I was going to list out these winning coalitions, they would be, let's just say winning coalitions. I'm just abbreviating win coal. I could say something like, well, players 1 and 2. I could say something like players 1 and 2. Because, well, players 1 and 2, yeah, you're a winning coalition right there. Because you have enough to kind of get over the top. Good for you. They don't need anybody else. But if they disagree, that's a bit of an issue. I mean, you could have, if you wanted to, player 1, player 2, and player 3. It's still a winning coalition. Put this right here. There we go. You could have player 1, player 2, player 4. That's a winning coalition. Just player 1 and 2 already have it. In fact, there actually is a definition that goes with that. But I'm going to get into that in a little bit. You could have player 1, player 2, player 3, and player 4. They could all agree with each other. And that's a winning coalition as well. But those are all the scenarios where player 1 and player 2 agree with each other. What if they disagree with each other? Player 1, if they can't get player 2 on their side, well, they're going to need player 3 and player 4 to go along with them. Both of them. They need both of them. And if they don't, oh well. Player 2, same thing. You could have player 3 and player 4 on your side as well. Through a systematic way of going through the voting system, you can actually list out all of the winning coalitions. And that's actually what we have right here. Doesn't take that long most of the time. Just a matter of kind of going through and just seeing, okay, well, how many are there? And eventually next week, we're going to determine based on the list of winning coalitions, like, well, how do we determine who has the most power? Well, clearly we know who has the most power, but how much power do they have? See, the interesting thing is this, and I'll just kind of give you a heads up on it. Player 1 and player 2, even though they don't have the same weight, one is weighting 8, one is weighting 7. Even though they don't weigh the same thing, player 1 and player 2 actually have equal power. They actually have equal power, believe it or not. And there is a way of mathematically computing that, but that's for next week. Okay. 2 more definitions and then I'm done for the day. Like I said, I wanted to give you some extra time to kind of work on those projects, and I'm kind of coming up on the deadline that I kind of set for myself. But I wanted to give you those 2 more definitions real quick. First of all, a dictator. You can define a dictator within a weighted voting system. A dictator is when a player's weight is greater than or equal to the quota. A dictator is when a player's weight is greater than or equal to the quota. Yeah, I mean, clearly, if you have a weight that's more than the quota, like, you can just pass and not pass things completely on your own. It's just, yeah, it's really weird, but that's the way it goes. You don't need anybody else. Way to be a dictator. And then, finally, there actually is a definition of what we call a dummy. There can be a dummy in a weighted voting system. A dummy is defined to be a player that never has a say in the outcome. They never have a say in the outcome. A dummy, to be very specific about it, they could vote for the motion and it passes. They could vote against the motion and it fails, but it doesn't matter what they do. For a dummy, it never matters what they do. Anything can be passed or failed without them, and there's never a scenario in which their vote matters. Never. Now, in this particular weighted voting system that we did before, there actually are no dummies. You might think, well, what about player 3 and 4? Well, there are scenarios in which players 3 or 4 are important. And again, we're going to get into those details next week. To determine whether or not you actually have a dummy, you actually have to determine whether or not a player is critical at any given moment. And in an instance like this right here, where you have players 1, 3, and 4, 3 and 4, you need both of them in order to do it. Neither of them are dummies. Player 1 needed them. If they are needed to pass something, they can't be dummies. I mean, obviously, if player 1 and 2 agree with each other, they don't care. They don't need anybody. But in certain instances, you do need players 3 and 4. It's a weird system. I love it so much. Okay. Now, like I said, you have a project due on Thursday. You have been instructed to contact me in regards to your topics. I've already replied to a few emails. I'm going to check my email again in a little bit. But if you have not picked a topic, you need to pick a topic. Check that spreadsheet against what topics have already been approved, because I would prefer that we all have different topics. That'd be fantastic. Your job is to stay away from anything political. That'd be fantastic. And you can't use ice cream flavors because I already chose ice cream flavors for myself. For the remainder of the time that we have, you have roughly a little bit over 20 minutes. You can either get your topic taken care of, or you can begin putting out those questions to people, because you need to get at a bare minimum 25 people. And we'll go from there. Fantastic. So if you have any other questions in regards to the project, email me. I will be checking my email over the weekend at various times. So I will be able to reply and get you guys moving on that project. Of course, getting the responses for these preference ballots, people ranking the 4 choices. Obviously, you're going to be doing it all electronically. I would prefer that you guys not, go out and meet people in person. It's a lot easier to gather like 25 responses when, you're in class with people all day, and then just go to the next class and you ask them, they all fill it out really quickly. So this one, you're actually going to have to, communicate with people. Obviously, I suggested using people within our class. I gave you their names in the project itself. Of course, you can always email them at barnegatschools.com. But anyway, that's it for me. I'm going to leave you to it. You have the remainder of the class to work on those projects. If you have any questions, email me. If you haven't left a comment in the stream, please make sure that you do so. And I will bid you a good day. Yay! 3-day weekend. Okay, bye-bye. 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 I'm going to sign off now. Bye-bye.